Welcome to BC Schizophrenia Society's event, Schizophrenia Revealed, the Untold Stories of Schizophrenia. We hope you will enjoy this event from the comfort of your home, your office, or your home office. We are absolutely thrilled that this web event can reach people across the entire province and even outside of our province. My name is Phaedra Aldridge, and I'm the CEO of the BC Schizophrenia Society, and I'm so happy to be here with you tonight. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land. From our office in Vancouver, I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Schizophrenia, as most of you know, is a serious mental illness that still has a lot of unanswered questions. And despite new understanding and research, there are still many myths surrounding this illness. Shortly after I started with BCSS, a young man, he works just down the hall, he knocked on my office door. He worked for a different organization and saw the title BC Schizophrenia Society. And it was interesting because his very first question that he asked me was, I'd really like to know more about schizophrenia, but can I catch it? And that was less than 2 years ago. We have come a long way in understanding this very complex and serious mental illness, but we still have a really long way to go. We know that 1 in 100 people worldwide live with schizophrenia. And we know it is not caused by poverty or by bad parenting. We know that schizophrenia is caused by a combination of genetics and environmental factors, and there is no cure at the current time. But that doesn't mean that there is no hope. Monday was World Schizophrenia and Psychosis Awareness Day. And to help bring light and to show their support affected by this illness, for people affected by this illness, landmarks across our entire province were lit up in purple. Some of the events or some of the landmarks include Canada Place, BC Place, Vancouver City Hall, Surrey Civic Plaza, the White Rock Pier, world's biggest hockey stick in Duncan, and of course, the BC Legislature building, just to name a few. And to further recognize this important day, we are all here tonight to help share the everyday stories of schizophrenia and how it affects people, both the person living with the illness as well as their family members. We will hear some untold stories of what it takes to live with and to manage the symptoms on a daily basis. It is not an easy road. But before I begin, I am very excited to welcome a very special guest. I get the great honor of welcoming the BC Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Minister Sheila Malcolmson. Minister Malcolmson has an important announcement and has kindly offered to provide some opening remarks tonight. Welcome, Minister Malcolmson, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule on this important day.
Thank you, Phaedra, and good evening, everybody. I'm so encouraged to see how many people have signed on from around the province and that we can all be together here to learn from each other and support each other. I'm joining you from First Nations Snuneymuxw territory in just outside Nanaimo. It's a real place of healing and wellness, and I draw on that every day. I'm honored to be here with you during Schizophrenia Awareness Week to recognize the important work done by BC Schizophrenia Society every single day, and to announce our government's continued support for the vital help and resources that the Society provides to the people of British Columbia. The work that you wholeheartedly take on is a vital part of our government's vision to build that comprehensive system of mental health and addictions care that work for everyone. Now, as you know very well, there are roughly 50,000 people across British Columbia from all walks of life who live with schizophrenia. People who share their stories tell me that living with schizophrenia is a constant challenge. Many people encounter stigma and confusion about their illness, which can present barriers when people try to access the care that they need. It's not easy for anyone to ask for help. And this is also true for family members of those living with severe mental health challenges. We know that family involvement is so important in the care and quality of life for people with serious and persistent mental illness. However, people tell me that the chronic stress family members experience as caregivers dealing with mental illness often negatively affects their own health, family dynamics, and the ability to cope. So I have such deep appreciation for the BC Schizophrenia Society, for its work, for all the families who care so much for their loved ones. You've told me that we need a mental health system that provides support to family members as well as those experiencing a serious mental illness. And that's why we are here today. Tonight, to expand vital supports for people whose family member is experiencing a serious mental illness, our government is announcing just over $1 million for the BC Schizophrenia Society. This means that families across British Columbia, including those in rural and remote communities, will have better access to education and supports to help their loved ones get the care that they need. Now, since the beginning of the pandemic, there has been a 40% increase in families asking for urgent help from the BC Schizophrenia Society, and more than 900 new families were connected with the support and information that they needed. This new funding will build on those successes and allow the BC Schizophrenia Society to expand necessary supports for families in crisis. These supports and education programs are free of charge. They help family members gain healthy coping strategies, better understand mental illness, and connect with a supportive community. Many of you listening today have directly benefited from this support, turning to BC Schizophrenia Society for answers, care, and compassion, and providing families with the help they need when they need it. Today's announcement is part of our work to develop a comprehensive system of care for mental health and addictions in British Columbia. Budget 2021 made a historic $500 million investment in mental health and addictions care. This is the largest ever investment in British Columbia's history. This budget will rapidly advance our journey to realize the vision laid out in our long-term plan, which we call Pathway to Hope. And it will help fulfill the ambitious agenda that Premier John Horgan has given me. We are laying the groundwork to make sure that people can access the quality, evidence-based care that they need to get on a path to a brighter future if they're struggling with mental health and substance use. We are learning from the lessons that COVID-19 has shown us. We're building back better to become more resilient, by investing in the foundations that we need to move forward in a good way. We're investing in people's well-being and building a future where nobody is left behind. My hope is that people will take heart in knowing that a brighter future is on the horizon. And I'm confident that with the continued efforts of our frontline providers, groups just like BC Schizophrenia Society, all the families, the people with lived and living experience, and all of our community partners, together we will get there. Thank you for your work and for the great honor of being together tonight.
I see these tears and this smile. Minister Malcolmson, thank you so much for your kind words and all of your support. BCSS, we applaud the provincial government's continued efforts to recognize and to support serious mental illness, as well as the need and your recognition of the importance of supporting families across our entire province. This support is essential. And just thank you so much for your continued support, as well as for taking the time to be here tonight to share this very special announcement with us. It means a lot. Thank you. Now, moving on, today's event would not be possible without the generous support of AA Pharma. With their sponsorship, events like this remain to be free and ensures that donations made to BCSS will go straight towards our programs and our services for families impacted by schizophrenia and severe psychosis. I now want to introduce you to Jeffrey Johnson from AA Pharma.
Thank you, Phaedra. As an organization dedicated to supporting patients and caregivers living with schizophrenia through offering therapeutic treatment options, we share the BC Schizophrenia Society's passion for driving awareness, education, research, and most of all, innovation as it relates to this critically important therapeutic area. We share the belief that early identification and diagnosis form the cornerstone to setting patients on a path to optimal treatment outcomes. However, we also understand the greatest challenge facing those suffering from schizophrenia, other than the disease itself, is the stigma surrounding schizophrenia. It's extremely difficult to help someone, and virtually impossible for them to help themselves if they are ignored, ostracized, and worst of all, abandoned due to a lack of awareness or understanding by those in their circle of influence. But what helps more than anything, what gives so many of our friends and loved ones strength, is the knowledge that they are not alone, that they are surrounded by people who care about them and who will support them on their journey to get well. This is our challenge, and we stand united with the BC Schizophrenia Society and patient organizations across Canada to help lift the veil of stigmatization over schizophrenia. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear the lived truth of several people affected by this challenging mental illness. These will be stories of perseverance, stories of overcoming what seem like insurmountable obstacles, and most of all, stories of hope. Today, we will challenge the idea of what schizophrenia looks like, and through thoughtful discussion, redefine perceptions and misconceptions around the limitations of those who are living with schizophrenia. On behalf of AA Pharma, it is our honor to sponsor this important webinar, Schizophrenia Revealed, the Untold Stories of Schizophrenia, in celebration of World Schizophrenia and Psychosis Awareness Day. And we're grateful to have had this opportunity to address you. Thank you, and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And once again, I'd like to truly thank AA Pharma for their support of this event. I'd also like to take the time to thank the team that I get the great honor of working with every single day. Thank you to Andrew, Cynthia, Sunita, all the regional managers, all of the educators, all of the frontline team working with our families across the entire province in both rural and urban centers. I'd also like to thank Dave and the entire volunteer BC Schizophrenia Society board, as well as Renato and the foundation board for all that you do for the families. And last but not least, Jean. Tonight's event would not be possible with everything and all the time you put in tonight's event. And the videos we're about to see would not have happened if it wasn't for you. So thank you for all your hard work that you put into tonight. And thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight, wherever you're listening from and viewing from. It really means a lot that we were able to gather here as a collective whole to learn more about schizophrenia and the impacts of it, the stigma, and what we can do about it. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to sit down with an amazing woman. Her name is Michelle. We talked about schizophrenia and how has it affected her and her family. It was a very emotional, but very powerful conversation. I was able to ask her about the effects of the illness on her son and what living with schizophrenia as a family looks like today. So, Michelle, here we are in False Creek, a beautiful park in Vancouver. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I can already tell that I'm going to be emotional, so I'm just going to start off by saying that.
It's not an easy topic, but I so admire your courage for speaking with me today. So first off, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It really does feel good to have a chance to speak and share some of our family stories and experiences. So thank you. It's important, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about your family. Let's talk about schizophrenia is not an easy term. It's not an easy diagnosis, but let's first off talk about your son. Tell us about Ricky.
Well, it was beautiful and joyful and still is in many ways. So when he was young, he just absolutely loved anything electronic, or he just loved his friends and being busy. But around adolescence, he started to show a lot of signs of anxieties, and then, well, he just kind of progressed until one day we were seeking help, thinking this is not okay, something's going on.
So what type of things were you seeing, Michelle? For somebody who doesn't know about those signs that you were talking about, what were some things that you were seeing Ricky go through?
Well, he was more difficult, because even when he was small, I thought he might have something like autism, because he was just had difficulty speaking and expressing himself. Like I was saying, he could take anything apart and put it back together when he was 4 or 5 years old, but for speaking, not so much. So he wasn't exactly letting us know what was going on. It was just watching that he was having increasing difficulty being connected and speaking the way his brother was, and when he was a teenager, he just started not being able to take care of himself, and seemed to have difficulty understanding what was going on, and eventually started to realize this is a bigger struggle than just a personality. Like, it's just different personalities. Something is going on with him.
Yeah, because I can understand as a parent, you're seeing your teenage son who probably, like you said,
Dumb
struggling in school. Yeah, exactly. He's a typical boy, with his friends and maybe, struggling in school. So I can understand as a parent how you probably thought, well, maybe this is just normal. Maybe this is just, his personality coming through and just how he is, and we're just going to have to adapt. So when did you start to say, okay, this is more than Ricky's personality and how he is, and when did you realize, or what did you see when you started to
behaviors that, suddenly he's leaving garlic around the house, and then he started digging holes in the yard to bury the garlic. And when I ask him what's going on, it's like he's not there. He's not answering why he's doing that. And eventually you realize it's voices telling him that he has to do these things. And he's not sleeping, and he's pacing, and he's disappearing. So, yeah.
I've heard that before. It's in the eyes.
Yeah, he's disappearing. Yeah, it's not him. So, and then another day he'll be him.
Wow.
So yes, it's very, very difficult and confusing, because so often it is just him, his personal little quirks and so on, and then burying garlic in the yard isn't okay. Something's definitely going on. I'm always interested in what people refer to as psychosis, because people have different ideas based on their own personal experience and their own family experience. For my son, it's like trying to understand why his brain is telling him that there's this other stuff going on that the rest of us don't see or hear. He's that someone would believe that a voice is telling them they have to protect themselves and their family by planting garlic around the house. And it's very difficult to have a conversation with someone who's very scared and worried about what will happen if he doesn't do these things.
Yeah, those voices are real.
Oh, very, yes. It's like having a full blast radio station. That's the way he describes it. I said to him, you mean like it's like a radio station? Yes, that's it.
Can you imagine living with a radio station in your mind all the time where
Yeah.
you couldn't just turn a knob and turn it off?
And he'll imagine people who he hasn't seen for years are yelling at him. You know.
It would be exhausting.
Yeah, it's. Oh yes, when you see him trying to, he's supposed to do a little studying. He's trying to do school or something, and he's trying to study. You know, try and study with someone yelling at you. He'll look at the same sentence, and then he gets frustrated, and then he gets upset, and then he paces around, and then he's trying to do it again. And yeah, so we started seeking help, and had for quite a while, because I was worried about his other learning difficulties and so on. But we eventually, he went to stay with my sister, because we didn't have access to anything where we lived, and she really noticed when he was staying with her. From the time he was there before till the time he went to stay again, she went, oh my God.
So your sister noticed a big difference in his behavior.
Yes. Like he was quite gone. She who would be in her living room behaving in a way that as if he wasn't there or she wasn't there.
So what was that like for you and your sister as a mother and his aunt? What was going inside your minds watching your son and her nephew going through this very difficult time?
I think we were very afraid for him because we also being at the age he was, you think maybe he's on drugs, right? Maybe he's doing drugs. So, and there was that as well. I mean, he and his friends were doing drugs, but then it's not stopping. He's not coming home at 2 a.m. and having these behaviors and then the next day he's fine. This was going on weeks, and yeah, we were so scared. We were having conversations of, well, what do we do? You know, my sister made some appointments and took him to different places. It took a long time to find. We found early psychosis intervention. I don't even remember how or who sent us there eventually. And then, there. They were so helpful. They spoke to him in a way that made him realize he needed help, and and they included us in the conversation, and it made all the difference, because before then, how do you have a conversation with someone who's not really there anymore? And the difference after he went on medication and started having conversations with there was a psychologist there that he just really clicked with, and he still talks about him. That was so helpful for him, because the awareness of what was going on for him, it mattered, you know, that it made everything easier for us, because we can speak to each other now. I'll read something and I'll say, oh, look this is what's going on with this organization. What do you think of that? And so we can have a conversation now, and he's doing so much better. But we still have the drugs, like the problem with the street drugs. So he'll be doing very well. You know, he's very compliant with medications, and then he just starts using street drugs again, and it's just like a spirals down.
What do you see as a mother with the impact that drugs have had on your son?
Oh, huge. I mean, and this has been going on with him for about 10 years, so ups and downs. And street drugs have come and gone in that scenario throughout. So I have a really good idea now of the effect they have. Even marijuana, you know, he smokes that, and he just spirals down for a few days, and then he has to come up again. It's huge effect on him. He wants to feel good. That's, I think, the pull. That stuff is it's a stimulant, those cocaines and crystal meth and things like that. It's a stimulant, and he has a really quick up. It's that feeling good, because a lot of the time he's not having very many problems with psychosis. It's depression and just that feeling he has all the time, and it's a real draw. I can tell within 24 hours, oh, he started again.
What do you see? What signs and symptoms when you say that he spirals?
Oh,
What do you see?
High anxiety just skyrockets, and it's really noticeable. It's almost like he's not on his medications anymore. It's like he's right back down the rabbit hole. So that on him, it has a very, very significant impact on his mental health.
Now let's talk about violence, and that's a tough word to say when you're talking about schizophrenia, but it's out there, and unfortunately, untreated schizophrenia, violence can be a big part of that.
Yeah.
What have you and your sister gone through in terms of your son around violence?
Well, I have never been afraid of my son. He's never been threatening towards me, but when he's in, it's more like when he's really anxious and frustrated, he would be very volatile, and the situations that he has gotten into where he became violent involved alcohol and involved someone who wanted to fight first, and he reacted the way any other person drunk and confronted reacts, right? And that has nothing to do with his schizophrenia. So it really bothers me if someone says, oh, he's got these two things on his record. I'm like, well, that wasn't because of the schizophrenia. That was because he was drinking with people. They drank way too much and he lashed out. So people are afraid of people who seem different to them all the time. Like, I find that it's very difficult for me to understand why it's such an automatic assumption that his schizophrenia was the reason for this violence, when in fact it was alcohol. And when you read in the newspaper about someone who has committed a crime and they were talking, oh, mental illness, why don't they say untreated mental illness? Why can't they just add that in the story? Like, this is not because he or she has a mental illness. It's because they didn't get treatment. But mostly the family is running around trying to get help for someone. They're watching them become uncoupled from reality, and they're not getting treated, or they're refusing treatment. I had 2 sons with mental illness, as it turned out, and they were totally different. I used to call them my bookends, because I had 2 sons, but they were so unalike. Every little detail of their personality and the way they responded to things, Ricky's is I find it easier to grasp, because there's an amount of understanding of schizophrenia as a brain illness, and right now his diagnosis is schizoaffective disorder, because he's so emotional as well. But somehow I can make more sense of it. His brother, that's bipolar personality disorder. We never ever, really tried to get him help, but unfortunately we had very bad luck when the people we took him to. he ended up dying of suicide at age 22, and he died without any diagnosis. So I always think if someone had helped us, he'd be alive. You know, he was really smart, really busy, had so many friends. You know, when he died, there was just like hundreds of people showed up, and he was everything went so quiet after he died. So yeah, that was that's only just, that was 7 years ago too. Look at me. I still puddle up, but
You never stop being a mom.
no.
And what a gift to be able to have two children.
Oh yeah.
With very different personalities.
Yes.
The part that breaks my heart for you as a mother, that you have 2 sons,
Yeah.
and both have brain illnesses.
Yes.
Very different brain
Yeah.
illnesses, as you've described.
Oh yes, and I think somehow not having a child with a mental illness is just good luck,
The theme through all of this is that you are a very active mother, involved with both of your sons' journey.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the importance of family involvement and where family comes into play, because I think in a lot of ways, family tends to get forgotten.
Yes.
and I think you are a prime example of the importance of having family involvement, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think my children were the earth, the moon, and the stars to me. So, when things start to go wrong and you're only looking for the best thing for them, what's best for them, their personalities, their needs, where are we going? What's the best thing that I can do to facilitate what you want in life besides bull riding? Look at it, I have a line drawn every once in a while.
I don't blame you on that one.
Yeah. But I was very reasonable. I really believe that people have to let their personalities develop, but as a parent, you still have to be there to make sure safety first and things like that. I just keep coming back to when we felt we were in trouble. Somehow we were getting blamed as a family for problems, but we weren't getting help as a family. If they really thought that my children had these difficulties because of fetal alcohol syndrome, then there was still no help. So what was the point in saying that? You're either helping or you're not helping.
So if you could give a message to another mother, another father, a grandparent, a sibling, and they were just starting to get introduced to the journey of serious mental illness and their battles with it, what would your message be?
If you're going to Google stuff, Here to Help gets you information. Go to your family doctor. Fingers crossed that they are a family doctor that knows mental health, understands who they can send you to. Join BCSS and get information if you think that it's, the range of things that it could be when you're first starting out. You're just like, this is beyond defiance, teenage defiance. Something is way beyond that. Look to professionals for help. Go ask other families if you can find other families willing to speak to you.
And the world needs more people like you who are willing to speak out about mental illness. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being a part of of talking about this and increasing awareness and doing everything we can to raise the awareness and increase that mental health literacy. So thank you.
Thank you.
I wish I could give you a big hug right now. So thank you.
Next year.
Next year.
Next year.
Yes.
Today, Michelle continues to share her and her family's experiences with schizophrenia. She volunteers to help other families know that they are not alone and that there is hope. Next, I'm going to be sharing the story of John. He's a son, a brother, a musician, and a writer, and an amazing young man. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but John lives with schizophrenia. I recently met up with John in a park to hear his story of how schizophrenia has affected him and continues to affect his life.
It's tough for a lot of people to hear that word and not be frightened, you know? And that's sad to say, because there are so many of us out there, 1 in 100, and for all those people, are they just a schizophrenic? Can you just throw them all into that one pile and describe them all as, you know, violent people who really have no control? But that's not true. We have control. It's really sad to see what the world has kind of portrayed schizophrenics as, when there are ones quite like myself that are somewhat high functioning, and I mean I can kind of say that about myself. Absolutely. I think I'm pretty high functioning for my illness, for the things that I have to go through on a day-to-day basis. You know, it gets really tough sometimes, but you know, I get through the day, and at the end of it, I'm still the same person that everyone else sees me as, but inside there's this whole other side of me that no one sees, and it's really difficult sometimes. But
so can we talk about the inside part? So, because what we see on the outside is a handsome, young, capable man.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to talk about the inside part. So what is your world like internally, John?
It's kind of a loaded question. It's tough, you know. I've dealt a lot with voices telling me things about myself that I know aren't true. However, there are many people, I'm sure, that just take the voices, take what the voices are saying at face value. This is how I'm going to live my life. However, for me, I've spent a lot of time fighting off these voices telling me, you know, that it's really difficult to give examples just because it's so personal, right?
Can you give us a picture of what that's like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think a pretty good place to start would be from where I started back when I was about 19 years old, and I first started having hallucinations. Actually, well, it kind of started when I was 17. I started smoking pot and I skipped class, so marijuana definitely played a big role in the onset, I think, for me. I would skip class, and when I did show up, I would often show up stoned, and I would hear the other kids talking about me, and I could hear them saying, "Oh, he's so high," right? And so that kind of led on into my later years, a couple years later, when I was diagnosed with psychosis. So they didn't really call it schizophrenia. I didn't even know what schizophrenia was back in the day, really. I would hear people talking about me, and I often thought that I was the center of attention. In everyone's mind, I often thought that people could see inside my thoughts, they could see in my brain, they knew what I was thinking, and I could communicate with other people via my thoughts, and I would hear them talking back to me. And it was quite frightening for a while.
What does a hallucination mean to you as somebody who lives with them?
Could be anything from seeing signs in the media, seeing license plates. I often see license plates. Letters and numbers are representations of words. However, there's also the signs in media, and it's often quite alarming because it's major, and I often feel responsible. Like, there'll be something that appears on the television and I'll find myself apologizing for it. Like, oh, sorry, yeah, that's just me, that's just my brain, yeah, sorry, I'm the one that's causing those sprinklers to go off during that tennis match because I'm having a rough day. And it's gotten to the point where it's very hard to discern reality from the hallucinations, because sometimes the news will turn on in the morning for my alarm, and I'll hear something that I was thinking about the night before, and it'll pop up.
I just can't imagine. I mean, it's, as you said, we all have voices in our head. If you're stressed, if you're upset, I just can't imagine what it would feel like to have multiple voices yelling at you and telling you what to do. I can't imagine.
One time, this is actually about 3 months ago, they told me that there was, I think it was like around 1,000 people in my head, and that my whole high school graduated class was watching me, and that they were in, and I could hear all the voices of all the different people, and it was freaking scary. Friggin' scary.
Absolutely. And how do you deal with that, John?
One day at a time. One day at a time. You just have to take it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time sometimes. There have been so many times when I've just wanted to give up and just end it all, drive myself off a cliff, jump off a bridge. I've thought about it all, but there's just this driving force that keeps me going. Like, I know I can get through this. I'm not gonna let this shit beat me. Pardon my French. I'm not gonna let it beat me. And it's come to the point where it's very difficult to have to deal with this stuff on a day-to-day basis, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it makes me really sad to hear you say, how bad it can be, that sometimes it would just be easier to end it. But I appreciate you sharing that, and it's not an easy thing to talk about.
No, absolutely not.
It's really not an easy thing, but it's important that we talk about it. And John, I hope you know that you're not alone. As you said before, 1 out of 100 people have schizophrenia. 1 out of 100.
I actually read a statistic the other day that only 1 in 5 people with mental health disorders actually get the treatment that they need. And that's ridiculous.
You said that you're on medication and that medication has helped you. So tell us about your treatment journey.
Medication is a godsend for me, personally. It has been. I've tried a lot of stuff that hasn't worked for me. It was an awful medication. It basically knocked me out. I would eat, an entire box of Oreos a day. I wound up gaining like 70 or 80 pounds, and it was a really, really crappy time in my life. I was just sedated and it wasn't a good medication for me, and it really didn't, well, it helped with the symptoms, but only because I was so sedated that I couldn't function. And I would just sit around my house all day, you know, and eat Oreos. And it just made me miserable just because I didn't feel like a human being. I didn't feel like I was able to function, you know, on a daily basis. I couldn't take care of the things that needed to be taken care of. I couldn't function. But I used to take an ADHD medication, which helped me for a while, and I wound up, I actually with my journey back when I was 19, I stopped taking much of my medications, and I was in rough shape for quite a while, but I had something that kind of woke me up to the fact that, you know, you need to be taking something, man, because this isn't working out for you.
And what about a support system? Do you have people to talk to? Do you feel supported?
Absolutely. I have an amazing support group around me. I have lots of friends. I got neighbors who are just so, I don't know where I would be without them. And fantastic family. My parents have been really supportive of me through it all, even though they have no idea. They'll listen, and they'll give their input. They'll tell me what they know or what they think is the right thing to do in the moment. But really, it's really difficult for the average person to understand what I go through on a day-to-day basis. So if you see someone who may be suffering from mental illness and who you think needs help, please take the time to reach out to them, ask them what's going on, and see if you can seek help for them, because no one should suffer alone. No one should suffer in silence. The stigma surrounding schizophrenia is something that we need to come together as a community and understand that not all schizophrenics are violent. Not all schizophrenics even hear voices. Sometimes it's, you know, hallucinations, or they'll see things, or there are so many different classifications of schizophrenia. But for those people that do hear voices and that do maybe have some different tendencies, they need to, sometimes you just need help. Sometimes you just need to reach out to someone. But that stigma, the stigma surrounding it is just so off. And I just want everyone to know that we're no different than, you know, the average person walking down the street. You can't look at someone and say, oh yeah, they're schizophrenic, just because, you know, they might be mumbling to themselves.
What gives you the courage, John? What gives you the courage to be able to sit here, right here on this bench with me today and have this conversation? Honestly,
I have dealt with a lot of stuff over the years, and I would really love to see a world where the stigma surrounding serious mental illness is no more, and that people will no longer think of schizophrenia as a violent illness. You can't shun people, you can't degrade them based on an illness, because this is curable. It's difficult to say that it's curable, but you can definitely manage the symptoms a lot better if you seek out the help that you require.
You can be treated.
Absolutely.
Through.
You can be treated through, and you know, it's the same with people with addictions, right? The answer isn't always to shun them or to throw them into a facility or anything like that. You know, sometimes the best option is to try and immerse them back into society and you know, send them into social gatherings and really just try and reestablish that sense of belonging and a sense of wellness and a sense of community. It's become very difficult for people with serious mental illness to go out there and to talk about it. And I really want to help get the message out there that, you know, you're not alone. You're not alone.
So, what's next for you, John?
You know, I often find myself living so much in the past that it's hard for me to think about my future sometimes. But, and again, it just comes back to living it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Because I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow. In the future, one thing I do want to do is try and help people with, you know, and I love being here today and sharing my story, because that's part of what I want to do with my future, is help people with maybe some similar experiences, maybe some not so similar experiences.
You're writing a book.
I am
which
writing
is
a book.
incredible. See? This is near the beginning of your book, called Voices in My Head, and you state, "But always remember that your future needs you, but your past doesn't. Let the fleeting thoughts be just that, fleeting. Let them drift away and move on with your day. Nothing good comes from dwelling on the past, and however tempting it may be to look back at the old times, you can't live there, no matter how badly you may want to."
Good advice.
Yeah. "Accept that your past is not indicative of your future, and you have the power to make it so. Change is your friend. Change your thoughts, and the rest will follow."
Thanks, Phaedra. I needed to hear that again.
So what did you mean by that?
Well, there are times from my past where I've made mistakes, and these mistakes have often presented themselves in my voices, and my voices will just scream at me and just endless, like they just will never cut it out. And sometimes they'll repeat the same things over and over and over and over and over, and it gets to the point where it just gets so tiring and so tough to deal with that, you know, I wrote that for myself more than anything else, because I need to hear that, you know, the past isn't always beneficial. Dwelling on things in the past is never beneficial. And there are times where your past may creep up on you and, you know, come scratching at the door. But you can't let that control you. You can't let that get to you. Because again, your future needs you, your past doesn't.
Very powerful. And that's good advice for anybody. Thanks for sharing that.
There have definitely been some tough times where I felt like giving up.
Where do you get your hope from, John? What gives you hope?
That tomorrow will be better than yesterday, and that I can make it so.
Growing up, I think I've seen better days. It's getting tough. Always trying to seem like I'm okay. I'm growing up. whatever that means anyway. I don't know enough. I'm just growing up, whatever that means anyway. I don't know enough. Just growing up.
John holds 2 jobs and continues to write and play music today. His book, Voices in My Head, is available on the BCSS website, www.bcss.org. Michelle and John, thank you for sharing your very powerful stories. I will never, ever forget our conversations in those 2 parks that day. The world truly does need more people like you. And tonight, you watch some of the moments captured from my intimate conversations with Michelle and John, conversations that probably led you to ask your own questions. Well, it is my great honor to have Michelle and John join me tonight to answer some of those questions. So if you do have questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, submit your question, and please remember to let us know whether it is for John, Michelle, or for both of them. So let's begin. First question, Michelle, this one is for you. So what is something that I can do as an average person to challenge the stigma around schizophrenia? Michelle.
Well, there's a lot of information out there, so you can learn about it. You can ask people, you can ask families, you can ask people like my son or John. You can ask us what's happening in our lives. Stories are better, but a book is there. There's some, the BCSS puts out so much information that is out there. Educate yourself, care about your neighbor. I love listening to John talk. That was excellent, John. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah, it was. And I agree with you, Michelle. What really moved me is when John looked in the camera and he said, just talk to people, ask people. Yeah, would you agree with that, Michelle or John?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is why I'm so happy that we have this opportunity to talk tonight and for both of you to share your stories with everyone who's listening right now. We need to shout it from the rooftops and talk about serious mental illness. And that is the only way that I think we're really going to start to have an impact. So that's why I tip my hats and applaud both of you for your courage in speaking out tonight and to do everything we can to address stigma. Now, John, did you have anything else you wanted to say about stigma that we didn't talk about in the video or we didn't show in the video?
Well, again, it just comes back to really communicating with people and, challenge that stigma, because as a schizophrenic since I was 17 years old, I'm 27 now, it's been 10 years since my diagnosis. And really, if we can come together as a community and kind of challenge that idea that all schizophrenics are violent, such as is portrayed many times in media and film, then we could live in a more integrated, better community, and we can all come together as one and really change some lives.
Well said, well said. Okay, next question. Do you think if society was more accepting and open to the term schizophrenia, that things would be different? Why and how? I'll leave it up to you two, Michelle or John, who'd like to tackle that one?
Why and how? Well, a rose is a rose by any other name. So people react to whatever you call anything. I think people have to be just a little bit more square on. That's the word. So we can use it and we can make it better. We can make what it means more meaningful and better for people and their families.
Well said. Thank you, Michelle. And John, what are your thoughts on the term schizophrenic or the term schizophrenia?
Well, schizophrenia has come to mean many things to many people. And like I said in the video, every classification is different. There are people who have auditory hallucinations. There are people who have sensory hallucinations. There are people who have visual hallucinations. They're all very difficult to deal with. And I think I saw a question pop up in the chat there regarding sensory hallucinations. Yes, I have had olfactory sensory hallucinations, smelling things that aren't there. And again, the auditory is a big one there. If we can, it's all very difficult to deal with sometimes, but if you take it one step at a time, then things do get easier. Society as a whole, they've kind of become somewhat disillusioned to the fact that schizophrenia is more of a violent illness than anything else. But speaking from experience, with all the hallucinations and everything that I've been through personally, hearing things, having voices telling me to do things, and it's difficult to deal with. But if you talk about it and if you get help, then there's no reason why people living with schizophrenia shouldn't be able to fit in perfectly with society, just like everyone else.
Well said. Well said. Thank you to both of you for that. So another question in our chat. This is an interesting question for both of you. What are the 3 top questions that you would want scientists to solve or to research about schizophrenia? Let's even just pick one. That's a tough question. That's a good question. Michelle, let's start with you.
Well, over the years, I've kind of exhausted myself reading everything that's come along, the latest and greatest and everything. So that is a tough question, because really, we all want the magic. we just want to get up and have the right pill for the right thing for us. I think I would love to see medications that helped with reduced side effects. That there are some side effects to some of them, well, if not all of them. And yeah, I'd love to see, and a lot more research into how it affects people's lives beyond medications, which are helpful. But I'd like to know a little bit more myself about the therapies that were very helpful, beyond just medication, that feeling that you're getting help and you're improving your skills, cognitive remediation and things like that. Maybe we will never have the magic pill. So why aren't we working a little harder on what makes us tick and how we can have a better quality life? And that goes for everyone. I mean, you could just spread that out for everyone, but I would love to see that.
Well said. Thank you, Michelle. John, what would be your top item?
Well, one thing I would probably want scientists to figure out is, and I know it's very difficult to find that root cause. However, I've been told time and time again that schizophrenia is a chemical imbalance in the brain. But what chemicals are imbalanced? What is it that causes these voices to become such a huge part of whoever's suffering's life? And it's very difficult to get down into the nitty-gritty there, but I would love to have a brain scan sometime and really check out, see if my brain chemistry is different than your average person. I think that would be the main thing, is really get down into the nitty-gritty, the science. And I know it's, like as Michelle was saying, there's probably no magic pill that's ever gonna solve every symptom and every issue that arises from having schizophrenia. However, if we could find that imbalance, that the strand of DNA or something that may be the root cause of it. I mean, there's got to be something. There's got to be something.
As we said at the beginning, we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go, don't we?
Absolutely. This is true, Phaedra.
And I have to add that at one point when I was speaking in the video, I mentioned, I had that experience of being told my sons had problems because they had fetal alcohol syndrome, and I never even took a Tylenol for a headache. I mean, that's the level of ridiculousness that you're faced sometimes when you're seeking help, because no one's helping you if they're saying that that's a cause. That it isn't a cause. It's people like to come up with causes, and we'll get there maybe one day. I don't know if it's in our lifetime, John.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Don't
Be
believe everything
hopeful.
Yeah.
tells you, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So we have another question here. Actually, we have a number of questions. The question is, I know somebody, and this individual is not taking their medication, and this person is refusing to take medication or to seek help. He insists that he's fine, but will sometimes search up symptoms such as hearing voices. Do you have any suggestions on how to help this man on his journey? He's almost 30 years old and has not really had adequate support in his life. Do you have any advice for this young man or for the person asking this question? Let's start with you, John.
In order for someone to really get the help they need, it is very difficult to have someone to try and help someone who doesn't want help. However, there's a few different options, and even just bringing it up and talking about it is a huge one. Just no judgment scenario, it's a no judgment zone, and just ask him what is going on in his head. And if you can start to dig in somewhat to more of the internal stuff rather than what he may have on the outside there, he may be able to start to open up to you, and he may start even to trust you as a friend, and as a like, it sounds like he is in a sort of self-righteous almost kind of state. However, there are times when people won't want help, and it's tough, because 1 in 5 people who have serious mental illness sometimes don't get the help that they deserve. And it's difficult to help someone who doesn't want to be helped. However, if you can build that trust and build that relationship, then there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to become better through the re-immersing into society, better with that sense of community, better with that sense of wellness.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I appreciate that. Michelle, as a mother, do you have anything to add to that?
I think
Any
it's
advice?
when the things that have always helped, people like John, who can share a similar experience, can get a person to recognize that they're not alone. I think that word trust is important. You have to establish trust with someone. You can't just be telling them you should do this and you should do that. You have to listen to someone and establish the trust. And for some people, if they have someone in their life that is already available to them, that makes it easier. But some people have had their trust stomped on, or they imagine that it was. So yeah, try to reestablish the relationship and establish and trust, and eventually you might be able to convince someone to try out some help. Just try some help. There's that's the only place you can start at if someone is refusing help.
Yeah, thank you. And there's so many questions here to choose from, but last question, and John, this one is for you. If a family member is unable to accept their diagnosis and does not believe that they need medication, is it useful to use the word schizophrenia or another means of communicating in trying to persuade them that treatment is in their long-term interests? Whew. What do you think, John?
Whew.
Should we use the term schizophrenia? I know my answer. I want to hear your answer.
In the conversation, I wouldn't jump right into the schizophrenia, just because, you know, there are so many people still that don't quite understand the different diagnoses of schizophrenia. And schizophrenia and psychosis, just as Michelle mentioned in her video, early psychosis intervention, great program. I was actually involved with them back in the day. Early psychosis intervention and just talking to a professional, just to get a general idea of more information on what schizophrenia is, what psychosis is, what some of the symptoms are. In the conversation, it'd probably be beneficial to figure out what kind of symptoms they're experiencing first. And I don't know if we might be able to get that information, but if someone is in need of help, again, it does come back to establishing that trust. It does come back to speaking in layman's terms to the person. Psychosis, voices, hallucinations, and it may be a hard thing to accept at the time, but in the long term, for sure, getting treatment, getting help is very beneficial and will be beneficial to this individual.
Well said. And you know, you two just inspire me so much. And both of you said very similar things. You both use the word trust a lot. You both put a lot of emphasis on the need to seek treatment, to create that safe zone, whether it be with family members, support system, neighbors, as John had said, with psychiatrists, to create that safe zone for people and to keep talking. And that's where both of you are, you know, incredible examples of the need for all of us to continue these conversations in any format, whether it be a podcast, through a video screen, through newspapers, through the media, but we need to keep talking. And I think through talking, we will have hope. And let's hope that those researchers, as we were talking about earlier, continue to research and to not only find that magic pill, Michelle, that you were talking about, but to improve quality of life for the individual living with illness, which would obviously in turn improve the quality of life for the family supporting that individual. That was an amazing Q&A session, and there's so many other questions, but unfortunately we will have to close it there. But John and Michelle, thank you for making this event so incredible, to shine a light and to be able to offer your perspective from your personal perspective as to what serious mental illness and schizophrenia mean to you. So thank you to both of you very much for being here and for sharing your stories. And I hope that you, everyone who's listening, will take some of what you've learned here tonight to help people understand that there is hope for people living with schizophrenia and their families. You are not alone in this, and help is available. Thank you for joining us tonight to mark World Schizophrenia and Psychosis Awareness Day. Let's keep talking. But before you leave, please mark your calendars. We're going to be having another public awareness and education event on Saturday, October 2nd. It's the BCSS AGM. And please take a few moments to fill out the survey that will pop up as you leave your Zoom tonight. Your comments are going to help us for future events. And if you want to watch this again, if you had the Kleenex out and want to watch it again, I certainly had my Kleenex out. Or if you'd like to share this with anybody, it will be on the BCSS website. And that website again is www.bcss.org. And I'd also like to take another moment to say thank you to AA Pharma, to Jean for organizing this event, for my entire team across the province. You guys rock. You guys really do. You're amazing. And thank you to you for viewing wherever you are tonight in our province or outside of our province. I so appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and for making this evening so special. So if you're not already a member of BCSS, now's your chance. Please go to the website, sign up to become a member of BCSS, and to sign up for our newsletter so you can get regular stories from us. And thank you again for joining us. Let's keep talking. Let's keep shining the light on schizophrenia. And thank you so much for attending our event. And please remember to fill out that survey. We really do want your input and value what you have to say. Remember to take care of you, take care of each other, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.